Hey guys, Jay Knowlton here once again, and I have talked about ALTs and my opinion on whether I think they're necessary, the industry and stuff like that. And unfortunately, sometimes you just find the story from an ALT, an assistant language teacher, an English teacher in Japan working at public schools. And when you see this kind of story, you kind of realize that there has to be some sort of proper training, proper screening, some sort of system to try and keep the bad teachers out. So yesterday, or the day before yesterday, I think, I found this post on Reddit, which was accidentally slammed a student's book on the desk, which sounds weird in itself because there's no way that would ever happen. And as with all these kind of posts on Reddit, they get deleted a few hours later after they get flamed in the comments. So I'm going to read this. So, hello, I would like to ask for some advice. And usually they're not asking for advice. They're either asking to be validated or just ignore the advice they're given. Today, my class became very noisy and the students were not listening even to the JTE, the Japanese teaching of English. Out of frustration, I ended up slamming a student's book on the desk to get their attention. So, not accidentally. I realized afterward that what I did was wrong. The JTE corrected me immediately in front of the class, and I also apologized to the student afterwards. Now, the JTE wants to inform my dispatch company about what happened so they can give me better teaching advice. Very reasonable. I told her that I would be the one to tell the company because honestly, I'm worried about getting into trouble. My dilemma is whether I should just inform my dispatch company myself or leave the situation as it is. I would also appreciate advice on how to handle very noisy classes in an ALT without being frustrated. So first of all, very, very shady behavior because the essence of what the person is doing is they're basically saying, actually, I told the JTE not to tell my company because I'll tell them myself, but actually I'm not going to tell them myself so I can get away with it because obviously they know what they've done is very, very bad. Now, those who haven't taught or those who don't really have experience with kids, you might hear of someone slamming a book on a desk and think, well, it's not that big of a deal. That is a very big deal, and it's a very terrible thing to do. And if I was the manager of this school, they would, as in the dispatch company, the manager of this teacher, they would be issuing an apology to the principal of the school because this kind of behavior could be seen as, how can I say, in Japanese, it's kind of like tekisetsu, which means like inappropriate. It's like not abusive, but it's very inappropriate behavior. Sorry if you can hear the local kids playing outside. If you imagine you are an adult in a classroom, and in another post it mentions that they are 5th grade students, which means they are 10 or 11. And since it's May, they're probably mostly 10. If you imagine you are an adult and you take a person's belongings, a child's belongings, a book, which elementary school books are usually quite thick, and you slam it on the desk, probably on a student's desk, what do you think the student is going to feel? Fear, scared, worry, intimidation? You might think that's too much, like thinking too much, but that isn't the case at all. You would have to put yourself in that kid's shoes to really understand what kind of damage, something that you think is just an accident or, a spur of the moment, that could really hurt a child. Because that might not even be the child that was being noisy. You could have just taken a random one and slammed it down. It's very inappropriate behavior. And if you are not able to be in a teaching environment and not be able to handle when kids are being noisy, then I'm sorry, but education might not be for you because at the end of the day, 10 to 11-year-olds are 10 to 11-year-olds and sometimes they're going to F about. I've taught lots of classes where kids don't want to listen. And, I've been teaching a long time. You might teach the same class again and again and again. Just on one day, it might just not be the day. It might be a day where you just give up and say, look, we're going to let this go today. And if the JTE can't handle it, it's not your position to handle it. You are just dispatched to the school. And please remember this, if you're an ALT or a future ALT, you are not employed at the school. You are a person dispatched. You are working for a dispatch company which has sent you here. In fact, if I was the dispatch company, I would change that person's school, because I don't think they should be working in that school anymore. Someone said it's not a big deal, to which the OP replied, apparently it's a big deal here, and what I did was I used the student's book. Now, I hate this kind of gaslighting into people imagining just because it's Japan, things are different. Yes, it would be a big deal here to slam a student's book on the desk. Do you think you can go to England, America, Canada, Australia, Germany, the Philippines, anywhere like that? Do you think you can go to a school in one of those countries and start slamming students' books on the table? Actually, if anything, it's probably less strict here. It's probably way more strict in other countries. The difference is you just don't know because you've not got any experience in those countries. I remember doing work experience in a primary school 17 years ago in England, and I worked in English schools when I was 21. There is so much child protection and so many checks. It is very intense. So I hate that. I hate that imagery that people put that it's just different because it's Japan. And then somebody asked, oh, so you're just trying to lie? Not lying, just asking if it's okay not to tell about it anymore since it's not much of a big deal. I don't want to get in trouble because I had a traumatic experience in work before. So what is the deal here? Because you caused this problem. So you're trying to now play the victim of, I've got trauma, and now you're using that as an excuse to try and get away with something that you did to a child. That is toxic, pretty toxic behavior. And I love the framing that it's not lying. It's not lying if I just don't say anything at all. This is one of the problems with the ALT system. Well, actually, it's just a problem with education. You never know what someone might do to the children until it's too late. There are sometimes stories, and actually recently in Japan, I don't know about other countries, in Japan there's a lot of stories recently about teachers doing stuff to children, both in terms of touching excessively or punishment. So it's definitely being, looked at much deeper. So it's just really, really stupid that one, people try to big these people up and say that it's not a big deal when it is. But because there's so little training and so little checking, because these dispatch companies are so desperate to get people into the schools to teach, you're going to end up with a lot of bad teachers. And that's why I believe the ALT system needs to be abolished and reworked from the ground up. It's obviously not working in terms of English education. You're bringing a lot of unskilled people to Japan. And I don't mean, I mean native English speakers who are unskilled. You're bringing them to Japan as well. And it's not productive for anybody. You will get some great teachers in and amongst that, but those great people will find a way into Japan somehow. Anyway, guys, please let me know what you think. It's a short one today, and I'll see you next time.